Hi, Andrew. Welcome to the show.
Hey, John. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. You are in China right now.
I'm in Macau, China. Yes,
Okay. So is
right
that
next to Hong Kong.
okay? Is that where you're working currently?
Yep, been here for about 12 years
Oh, really?
now.
Okay. When we first connected, I thought, oh, great. Someone from China. I'm sort of collecting all the different places that I've talked to people and all continents I've talked to except Antarctica. I was hoping one day someone's going to call me from there. So
That
this is
one's not
my
going to be easy, but
no,
good luck.
no. Well, some scientist over there may be writing a book.
Oh,
I'd
yeah,
be interested in.
very
Could be.
true.
Sure.
Very true.
So that's the final frontier for me. So China is at first. Okay, great. Well, you've written several books, but we're here to talk about one specific one. I'm looking at the cover right now. The Dead Ship Syndicate is a thriller, apparently.
It is a thriller. And I used to work in the film business, so I'll quickly give you a quick log line on it.
Okay.
When an expat moves to Macau to run his twin brother's AI company, he falls under the influence of a charismatic casino owner who recruits him to sell a crypto coin to the Chinese elite. But he soon discovers he's the dupe in a huge money laundering scheme that might be orchestrated by his treacherous twin. So I've turned it into a screenplay as well. So that's a good log line for both the book and the screenplay. And it's very much based upon my life, um, my reading of a lot of interesting events that happened here in Macau. Um, there is COVID in it as well. So when COVID hit, we basically were closed off to the rest of the world, except, you could do two weeks of quarantine.
Hmm.
The mainlanders were allowed to come in and out, but basically it became a very safe area. We had like two people who got COVID, and that was right at the end. So it was very safe. I had a lot of time to write.
Hmm.
And then before COVID, there were a lot of, it's a very quirky place. So as someone who had worked in the film industry and adapted a few books, you're always out there looking for clever little stories or weird stories. And I was able to piece maybe six or seven of them together in the book. And the book follows the one main character who's an American expat who moves here to run a software company, and then he gets involved with some money laundering, and Macau has the biggest casino industry in the world. So anytime you have casinos, you're going to have a lot of sin industries, a
Hmm.
lot of
Yeah.
crazy things that happen, crazy characters. And Macau itself just had a wonderful cast of characters that needed really to had a story told about them. So in the past, I had optioned books by authors like Steve Lopez, and one book was called Elmore Leonard Goes to Philly. So I try to have that very Elmore Leonard-esque kind of like Florida quirky mystery, but set in Macau, China. So
Okay.
so I'm very happy with the way it turned out. We got I think maybe like the third or fourth publisher I um, reached out to, said, let's do it. And my past experience of trying to get movies made, I had like seven or eight scripts that had directors attached, but we can never get them into production. So I basically just wrote the book and got a publisher interested, and I was just very interested in putting it out into the world and seeing how my work would hold up. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Oh, very interesting. Well, clearly the world is shrinking. We know that. And so you're in China. You're an American citizen, I take it?
I'm American and British, so I have
Okay.
dual
All right.
citizenship.
And so where did you get this published? What company did you use?
Company called Brother Mockingbird Publishing, so a small American publishing company in the South. And I had interest from another one, but they wanted some changes, and I was just like, let's just go with this. So yeah. And I found this a very interesting story between trying to get a screenplay made and a book made. The book industry, I think, is a lot easier, a lot more serious isn't the right word, but just a lot more um, the process of trying to get something made, trying to find an agent, trying to find a publisher, um, and then doing marketing is a lot different to what the screen, the film business is. So it's kind of nice to be put in a position where you're the one who's doing kind of everything and you're not waiting on other people. Like film business, you're always trying to find sales agents or financing partners or
Right.
talent or directors or actors who,
Yeah, there's a lot more to it for sure. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
obviously as an editor, you're very familiar with that process. So
Mhm. Oh yeah. Well, I've only heard about it. I'm the person who pushed the buttons and made it all look good. But yeah, there's a
true.
lot of
So
people ahead of that before they got to me, that's for sure. So I see on this book there's some Chinese writing. What does it say there?
it's a Chinese proverb, and it fit the book quite well, I thought. And basically, it means you always cheat the ones closest to you. And it's a Cantonese saying, right? And it's I don't know who said it to me. It may have been my wife. And it was just like that's kind of the theme of the book because he gets involved with his twin brother who ends up stabbing him in the back. So um, I
Hmm.
just thought yeah, once again, I thought it worked quite well.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a theme where, and in the process, he does find another family as well. So you have the breaking up of one family, but also joining another one. Which, if you work in the film industry, once again, it can be a big family. Um, at
Yeah.
least if you work on set. So,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
that I think life in general is can be that way too. We do have many of us have issues with our family, and we create our own, another family, or we become very close friends who would almost be like brothers and sisters too.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Now, I did a little bit of a survey of the works that you've done up till this book, and they all contain the word AI. The whole list of books that you concern yourself with AI, and we may or may not discuss them. But you mentioned that the Dead Chip Syndicate also has some AI in it. What is it with AI that you're so fascinated with?
Well, when I came out here, I was working at an analytics company. So if you go back about 10 or 12 years, analytics was the big buzzword, big data was the big buzzword, and then predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, diagnostic, So when I talk to my clients, we're talking about analytics. I have clients who are casinos and sports books. So they're using analytics to basically try to figure out, simple marketing stuff. We are trying to figure out when to send out a piece of marketing collateral or an offer at the best time when it would be used. And then maybe about 6 years ago, I kind of noticed that AI was suddenly everywhere. Like if you work with these software companies, they get Gartner puts out these words and puts out these lists, and basically, if you want to be if you want to if you want to be on the front end of marketing your company, then you kind of have to jump on the buzzwords before everyone else does. So what I did about 6 years ago now was wrote the AI Marketer, which was basically a book that tells people how to use AI in marketing. And from that book, I wanted to give out a book to my clients. So when I would go, pitch something to them or be because I speak at events as well. So I just basically took that one book as a model and then customized it for casinos, sports betting, retail, and others. But the book itself, it does have facial recognition technology in it. So that's some of the AI.
All right, good.
So
It clears up because AI can be all kinds of things. They make AI of famous people saying things they never said, so they can get pretty strange that way. But it could be, as you say, facial recognition. What other examples of innocuous AI that's necessary for industry that I'm overlooking or maybe not aware of?
so AI has become a very catch-all umbrella term. And if you once again, when marketers get a hold of it, they're going, and because it's a very sexy term and a very sexy idea, right? That we
It
could
is.
actually have machines coding and figuring out stuff without us telling it what to do. So there's that whole element of it might kill humanity in the process, right? Um, Global Challenge has had a very interesting thing a few years ago where they said there are 12 things that might destroy mankind. And it was everything from pandemics, meteor, can't remember all the other ones. But one of them, which had 10% chance of destroying humanity, was AI. But it was the only one that might be useful for all of the other 12.
That's
So
right.
you could use AI, to stop pandemics, or you could use AI to stop a meteor. We could figure out, where it was coming and where it might land. And, I think it may even had something to do with climate change as well. But yeah, but when we would build models that would be logistic regression models, that's technically AI as well. So now what was analytics 10 years ago is now falls under the AI umbrella. There's a very interesting casino. I don't know which casino it was, but what they did was they used AI to figure out who were the most profitable bettors for the casino. So they had the facial recognition technology to capture the person's face. And it would be someone who didn't give because when you go to casinos, a lot of times you can sign up for a patron card so they can track all of your behavior, all of your slot pulls, all of your gameplay on a table. So, but these were people who didn't want anyone to know who they were. So what they did was they used the facial recognition technology, got the person's face, and then saw what they were doing on the table. So in Baccarat, there's like basically three types of bet. One is, I think the banker's going to win. The other one is, I think the player is going to win. And then the other one is, I think the two hands are going to be tied. So it doesn't happen that often, but when it happens, you get like 10-1 instead of 1-1. So it's a high risk bet. But anytime you go for a high risk bet, the house takes a lot more out. So the house is taking 10% out of every bet that person makes versus 1.5% out of every other, out of the simple bets. So what the casino was doing was tracking who was their most valuable customers and then using, basically getting a list of these people and then marketing them to come back more often. The gaming commission here in Macau found out and said, stop doing that. We don't think that's good. And so now they just use facial recognition technology for security purposes. But it was an interesting idea, it was a very clever way to, because in casinos, basically the table seats are kind of like their airline seats. So that's their limited space, right?
Mhm.
Once those get filled up, then they can't open up other tables. It's basically that's all they have. So they want to get the most profitable people on those tables as often as they can. So
Yeah.
it was quite a clever idea, and I'm sure they're doing it in Vegas. I'm sure they're doing it anywhere they can now. But in Macau, we have uh, very powerful gaming commission. Basically,
Okay.
kind of lets them do what they want, but then when they see what they're doing, then a lot of times they'll crack down. So you get a lot of casinos doing interesting things for as long as they can, and then they get shut down in many cases. Yeah, so that was a little bit, and then then there's like natural language processing. So we do some stuff with hotels and looking at the sentiment of how people are, whether in emails you can do it, or you can also do it on from website when people make comments about it. And there's a lot of interesting things going on with Perplexity, ChatGPT. There's a lot of really cool stuff with generative AI, which is basically text to image. So I use a lot of text to image tools where you basically type in, I want a picture of, a woman playing at a casino table, and it'll spew that out for me. I want a picture of a woman playing actually or moving through a casino. So you could use some of the tools that actually do create video that
Wow.
is quite realistic.
So in this book, The Dead Chip Syndicate, you said there's some mention of AI. I guess some of the characters are using it. How are they using it in your book?
So one of the characters is a casino operator, and he's worried that see a lot of things that happen in Macau is you have a lot of people bringing in questionable money and gambling with the money and basically cleaning it. So they'll deposit the money in China, pick up the money here with chips, specific dead chips, and then play the chips. And as they so if they lose, so it's like it's a set of chips that are purely can only be played in one casino room. It's called a junket room, a high roller room, VIP room, basically. So what they do is they'll get 500,000 yuan, let's say about $100,000, deposit it in China, pick it up in Macau in the VIP room. But it's only these things called dead chips, which you cannot do anything with the dead chip. You can't spend them anywhere but in that casino room. But if you win, you play a hand. If you win, then you get some good chips, right? So the good chips you can then take and send it to any bank in the world. So basically, they're rolling over these chips in the process of a day or two. And then the money that they have left over, then they take it and basically send it to Switzerland or send it to the Philippines or wherever they want. So a few years ago, the government in China made it very difficult for politicians and police members of the police to come to Macau because they had a lot of problems of petty cash being picked up there or bribes being picked up there, brought to Macau, and basically gambled away in many cases. So they had a lot of politicians that stole money from their city council or whatever it was, come to Macau, thinking that they could double it up, but instead they lost it, and then they went back to China and had to steal more money and got in trouble with the junkets and obviously with the Chinese government. So one of the main characters, whose name is Cash Chiang, runs the VIP room in one of the casinos, and so he knows where all the bodies are buried, where all the money has been stolen and sent to. And so he uses facial recognition technology to basically make a book of all of the people that he fears could get him into trouble, could put him into jail. And there was an event here in Macau where a gambler was in one of the VIP junket rooms. He borrowed money from a loan shark. He gambled it all away. They took him to a place out in the middle of, there's a little place at the bottom of Macau, which is called Kolowan. So it's kind of like a bit away from everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were beating him up. They're live streaming the beating to his family in China, basically saying, if you don't give us the money, we'll keep beating him. And they beat him so badly that he ended up dying. So that's part of that was another story that I took and put in the book. So that death results in Cash getting arrested. So this is where he has to basically decide what to do. And this is where he teams up with the American and says, I'll give you X amount of dollars if I can buy your company. And then it ends up, it's a lot of gold and jewels that then they have to get to the Philippines.
Okay.
So yeah, and it all actually started. I was flying to the Philippines one of the first times I went there, and I remember as I was landing, the captain came over and said we'll be landing at Ninoy Aquino International Airport in 10 minutes. And then I remember that I had seen the 60 Minutes episode of Ninoy Aquino when he was in Taiwan, in Taipei, back in the 80s. I think it was the late 80s. And so basically on 60 Minutes, he's talking about, oh yeah, I'll be wearing a bulletproof jacket or bulletproof vest. And so what he did was and basically Marcos told him, don't come. I cannot guarantee your life. So he ends up flying, lands in Manila, and lands at that airport. And he ended up getting killed by supposedly someone from the provinces, and no one to this day really knows who ordered the hit. But that was the actual moment that kicked off the People's Revolution in the Philippines when they got rid of Marcos, and basically freedom was brought to the Philippines. So as I'm landing in that airport, I thought, oh my gosh, that's the one airport in the world named after someone who was murdered on its tarmac.
Wow.
And the second thought was that would be a fantastic start to a thriller.
Well, sure,
So
yeah.
that's like the opening line of the book. And my main character, he starts thinking because he realizes that he just gets a call from a detective in Macau who warns him that there's a hitman on his trail. So he's worried that he's going to land at the airport and someone there is going to be trying to off him like they did Ninoy Aquino. So it was all, it was all just kind of an interesting thing. And I thought, I thought it was a wonderful intro.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that was kind of how it all started.
Great.
So
So how long are you planning to live in China? When you retire, are you going to stay there?
I think I wouldn't mind. I'm half English, so unfortunately they got out of the EU a couple of years ago. But I do like Europe. America's a little odd right now. It's going through some weird teething stages. Um, I went back there last year, and it was, you know, they have a lot of social issues they need to deal with right now, and I have a Chinese wife as well,
Hmm.
so she's like she didn't mind LA and Atlanta and New York, but it's a culture shock. So I'm not sure.
Sure.
Although
Sure.
she did enjoy firing guns, so that was one of the things she wanted to do when she was there. So, but yeah, no, probably. But I do like Asia. I grew up in Singapore actually, so I'm very familiar with the Asian mentality. Uh,
Yeah.
for business, it's a very good place to be right now,
Yeah.
especially the casino industry.
So your book, Dead Chip Syndicate, is there any political overtones to it?
There's just that one where one of the main characters kind of knows he has to get out of China and out of Macau because otherwise he'll be arrested and thrown into a cell and disappear forever.
Right.
One of the things that intrigued me about Macau when I got here was there's a character who was a mobster in Macau in the 80s and 90s, and basically he ended up doing a movie about himself. So he ended up shooting a movie about his life. It's available on YouTube right now. It's Casino. It's called Casino. You go Casino Macau, and that'll pull up. So basically, what he did, he shut down one of the bridges for a day because he was shooting a scene where the one of the mob leaders was killing an informant, and so he ends up making the movie, and it doesn't get shown in Macau. Opening night in Hong Kong, he gets arrested and brought back to Macau. Um, I think he spent about 15 years, but he put up money for his own wing. So they were like, okay, we'll take that, we'll take the however much it was. And they let him build, they built his own wing for him. The day he gets out of jail, which was about 5 or 6 years ago, he goes off to Galaxy Macau into one of the big junket rooms. So he was involved with that. Yeah, so it's got a lot of colorful stuff like that, and a very irreverent kind of place. The All around this time, the Portuguese were kind of the end of, I think it was 99 when they gave it back to China. So they were all desperately because they were fed up. They didn't want to spend any money on this place anymore. So
Hmm.
they gave it back to China, whereas obviously with Hong Kong, the Brits wanted to keep Hong Kong, but China was like, no, 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 we want that back. And then so you had this situation where the 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 um, the mobster was put up in front of the judges, and none of the witnesses were willing to testify because as happens in America and everywhere, when you get threatened, a lot of times you don't say anything.
Yeah.
So apparently, the judges, three of them, I think they were, went behind closed doors, watched that movie, and felt that the movie was such an accurate portrayal of this man's crimes that that was what put him away for jail. So it was like the one time in history where a fictional movie
Oh
put
my
someone
God.
away into jail or
Wow.
yeah. So that's kind of like, and then all those judges, I think they, basically hightailed it back to Portugal and they were done with it.
Jeez.
So it was, I mean, once again, just the crazy stories that you
Yeah,
hear.
it is.
So,
Yeah. So when did this book become published? How long has it been out?
oh, it's been out July of last year,
2023.
July 23rd, I think. Yeah,
Yeah. So over
23.
a year.
Yeah.
We're now October
Yeah. Yeah.
2024.
Yeah.
Can you tell how sales are and how it's doing for you?
Not as good as I hoped. But it is actually I am writing a sequel to it. So I do have an idea of it being a trilogy.
Oh,
So, once again, it was a small publisher. It did end up, though, one of the proudest things that happened, it did end up in the library in San Francisco.
hmm.
So there's three copies in San Francisco, and a friend of mine actually went in, and it was quite funny. And I have the picture. It's basically in the new book section. My name is Pearson. The world's #1 selling author, James Patterson, is right to my left.
Right, right
Right,
next
so
to you.
I'm here. Patterson's there, and then I have two other New York Times best-selling authors, women, uh, to my right. So haven't quite made the New York
Great.
Times list, but it was like to make it into the library. I thought was a fantastic,
Absolutely. Well, placement
fantastic.
is everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell
So
me,
anyone listening,
tell me, and those watching the show here, how do you get your book into a library?
so that was where my publisher. We must have. I think so. We did get it reviewed from Book Life, and I think with them you can actually pay for an advertisement that goes into basically a publication that goes to all of the librarians. So basically it's sent to all the libraries throughout the country. And I had another one, the St. Pierre County Library up in near Seattle, Washington. They have
Okay.
a copy as well.
Okay.
And then we did some more marketing through that, and it got interest from about 30 different, but I don't know if we've made any sales for it yet. So,
Yeah.
but no, that was that was nice. That was good.
Okay.
But the one thing when you write a book, the one thing you have to realize is marketing is everything.
Oh, absolutely. That's where most
It
authors that I talk to, including myself, struggle with.
yeah
Writing the book's the
yeah
easy part, by the sounds of it. Yeah.
yeah, and it's obviously you do aim for that agent who can get it to one of the big publishers, but I also heard that the the second book is one of the best ways to sell your first book. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
if you have a series, then I get BookBub every day, and maybe every third day they give away one of the books for free because it's always part of a series of five.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so and honestly, I think the industry that I'm working in is such a fascinating industry, filled with just weird characters. Like the next book I'm writing, the title's either going to be Singapore Odds or Quid Pro Crypto. So it's actually about the book being made into a movie, and then the director gets kidnapped on day one when they're shooting in either Malaysia or Singapore. I'm not yet, but it's involved with match fixing because Singapore and Malaysia are very big
Mhm.
into football match fixing. So it's all about, once again, it's going to have a bit of the gambling element to it, and once again, very interesting characters. One of the things I did with Dead Ship was Macau is this place where it's half Chinese, half Portuguese. So I had one of the characters was Chinese, he's the junket operator, and the other character who's the policeman who's trying to basically arrest them, he's Portuguese Macau. And then you had the American coming in as well. So you had a nice triumvirate of different nationalities and different races.
Excellent.
And
That's great.
the other that book will also contains a little bit about crypto. So
Yeah, but it sounds
the other
interesting.
the other thing, the other storyline in the book too is kind of based on a real story too, which was something called Dragon Coin, which was a crypto coin that was supposed to be able to raise money for a floating casino that would be floating right off the coast of Macau, that the Norwegian government was supposedly involved with too, because they're very good with oil rigs, and apparently they wanted to get into the Chinese Chinese gambling business. So, and it's a real coin that ended up, it did get released, but they weren't able to do the junket, associate with the junkets, and
Mhm.
help people funnel money in and
Yeah.
out of China and Macau. So, but once again, it was just another quirky story that I was like, that just is so unbelievable. Let's kind of make satirize it. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah. Does the story in your sequel and ultimately the trilogy, or perhaps one day you may want to consider writing a whole series, do they continue on? Characters continue on, or are there separate
yeah,
stories?
they do.
Oh, okay.
They do. They
All
do. The
right.
detective returns in. So the main character is Anthony. He's going to be in them both, and then I'm not sure. Yeah, and then I'm not sure how many other characters will reappear, but there will be there'll be at least one or two.
Okay.
So
How far
yeah,
how far are you into the sequel?
I'm about a third of the way, but I'm working on another book as well that kind of it used to be a screenplay and then I reread it. And this one's a kind of like this one is about a woman who's a feminist who decides that she wants to date or pretend to date a romance guru, a man, a male romance guru who teaches men how to pick up women.
Okay.
And I wrote it like 10 or 12 years ago. And then I reread the script and I was like, with the crazy thing that's going on with the men's rights activist movement and,
Hmm.
you know, the in many ways the terrible misogynistic men, now with the Andrew Tates of the world. I was like, this is
Yep.
suddenly incredibly relevant. So
Yes.
I've jumped on that, and I'm actually doing a UCLA course to finish up that book first. So it'll be a bit of a departure,
Okay.
but it's very relevant right now. It's
Okay.
kind of scary what's happened to. I'm glad I'm not dating. I'm glad I'm not in the dating world right now because it just
Yeah, I
doesn't seem
know.
like a lot of
Me
fun.
too. I feel the
You
same
know?
way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wrote a small book just before I retired, about 2 years before I retired, and it took a lot out of me because I was so busy. I was working, and how do I find the time? Plus, I'm a musician. I like to compose and record. You're still working, and you're talking about writing all these books. How do you manage your time?
I do have my employees who they're the ones who do most of the work. I do some writing on the side for some other clients, and but a lot of my work is managing my people, and managing relationships with customers too.
Okay.
Um, I speak at some events as well. I just spoke at an event in Cebu, and
Hmm.
I'm off to Taipei in November. And so, as a writer, you just write. It's
Yeah.
almost like you have to stop yourself from doing the writing to do the work.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the hardest part, because the
Yeah.
writing's always going on in there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then you're like, no, 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 I need to do this client stuff. So, um, so yeah.
That
And
was
I
that way
think
with music.
yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure
Yeah.
it is. I played, I took a few classes with guitar and I did enjoy it, but that takes a lot of work and a lot of time as well.
You have to
So
immerse yourself in whatever your passion is, and then
you really do.
you're always thinking about it, even when you're working in something
Yeah.
not associated with it. So yeah, oh, cool. I was just thinking if you wake up early and you do your writing in the morning, or is there any
I
specific
find,
time?
yeah. I find I write in the morning and then I do my editing at night. It's like I seem to
Same thing
my,
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's like the brain is a lot more. The weird thing though is like when I was writing Dead Ship, my gym has it's at Sofitel at the hotel, and they have a
Mhm.
nice sauna and a nice steam room. And I find that's a fantastic place also to do some editing. And it's just your mind's like in a whole different state. So it's not good to write, but it's good to just reread and then,
Yeah.
tweak some of the ideas,
Yeah.
and tweak some of the dialogue. So I think one of the things that I really worked hard on was the dialogue, and that was a lot of the compliments I got when I was writing it. Because I wrote it through Critique Circle. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's an interesting site where you basically join and then you put up a chapter and then you get credits by reading other people's work as well. So it's a very good process where you can basically write your book over the course of several months and then read other people's work, but you start getting into a community. So a lot of people will be reading your work, you'll be reading their work, and honestly, commenting on other people's work
Yeah.
is actually a really good way to perfect your craft as well. So I found that really helpful, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who is who does have writing aspirations as well, because there's nothing like because you think you have written something nice in a perfect sentence or paragraph, but when people start saying, "Yeah, that was really good," and I had a lot of people that complimented me on the dialogue, especially.
That's
So,
neat.
so
That's
that's kind
really
of where
neat.
the
Yeah.
characters are speaking to you
Yeah. Yeah.
well, and it is getting through, and the goal that you want it is being reached. So yeah,
Super. You want to talk about your website? What goes on there?
that's just filled up with I've written some short articles as well on Medium. So those are mostly business related stuff. So, but I do write a lot on AI and the latest things going on in AI. So quite a few articles there about generative AI. And then there's, you can download the scripts, or at least the first 10, 15, 12 pages of some of the screenplays. And I think there'll be the first chapter of the novel as well. Will be on there. And then it's just basically a author website to showcase my writing.
Other than that, where is your book available?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, pretty much. It's sold through Ingram, so whatever whatever channels they can go through.
Okay.
It's in the bookstore here in Macau if you want to visit. So,
I'd love to.
um,
I'd love to. I'd
but
love
it
to.
is once again, it is in the if you're in San Francisco as well, just jump over to the San Francisco Library. It seems like one of them has been checked out, and I think maybe they may have lost a copy because it's been checked out since the end of August. So I don't know if the reader just
Okay.
can't let it go or
I guess
has
so,
refused
yeah.
to buy a new copy.
There's some
So
overdue charges right there.
yep, adding up.
Yep.
So
Want to give us an elevator pitch? I'll put you full frame and you could talk about your book and why people should check it out.
sure.
Go ahead.
So The Dead Ship Syndicate is my first debut. It's my debut novel, so the first novel. It's very much if you like things like Elmore Leonard or some of the Dave Barry, some of the Florida quirky mysteries, this would be very much up within that angle. So clever dialogue, a thoroughly original storyline that taps into a lot of colorful characters and a lot of unbelievable escapades in many ways. So yeah,
Sounds great. Sounds really good, Andrew.
well,
Been real,
thanks.
it's been a real pleasure having you on here and talking about this. And being that you're living in China, I think this is really exciting. And you call me, get back to me or write a letter or whatever you do when you got your next book out, and we'll do this all over again.
Definitely.
All
Okay.
right.
Yeah, and more than happy to send you a copy. I know if you have time to read it, read it. If not, just or flip through it. I could have my sister send you a copy of the next book, and yeah. So I'd love to. It was very
I would like
entertaining.
that very much. And I don't have time to read books while I'm doing the podcast because that's how I'm doing the
Yep.
podcast. But in my free time, when I'm not doing the podcast, I do read books. So
Yep.
I probably could read it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well,
Super.
let's exchange. Let me get your address, and
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that for
definitely
sure.
do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, you have a nice rest of your day or night or whatever it is over there right now.
Night 11.
Okay. Well, then have a good sleep and you'll be hearing from me tomorrow via email. All right.
Okay, great.
Take
Thanks
care.
again.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, and if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then I invite you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment if you wish. And if you are an author, I would sure love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing, and remember to be kind to one another.